Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Jams and Tea podcast where we spin the jams and spill the tea. And today we are going to be talking about two brand new records and actually a fairly large release today. We're going to be talking about the fourth album from American football, emo, and post-rock legends. They are coming in with their fourth self-titled LP, first album in 7 years. And we're also going to be talking about the latest record from top dog signee Isaiah Rashad, his latest album, It's Been Awful. But we're gonna start off talking about American football. And American football is a band that really looms large in specifically a space that this YouTube channel is really fond of, which makes it weird that this is the first time we've ever talked about them.
I'm really surprised there's no American football record club in the
I,
backlog.
I don't know why that didn't happen because we're all bare minimum fans of at least one of the prior American football records. And I mean, obviously we have the absolutely seminal 1999 release of the self-titled record, which honestly was just in retrospect so ahead of its time when it comes to blending Midwest emo stylings and post rock because that wasn't really a movement that really got brought back until the third wave of emo was kind of in full force in that sort of middle pitchfork era where we had bands like The Hotelier, where we had bands like The World is a Beautiful Place, I'm No Longer Afraid to Die, to bands that we've covered the entire discography of, which is why this is so strange. But it's really notable that American football are even still kicking just because they got to this sound so much faster than everyone. And I kind of feel like that's what's responsible for their reputation and their basically legendary status in both the music press and in online music circles. And kind of doubly so as they were one of the more notorious bands to kind of release a classic record, come back more than 15 years later and drop a follow-up that was considered immensely disappointing at the time. American Football LP2 is fine. It's not a bad album. It's just not a particularly interesting one. But 2019's American Football LP3, on the other hand, this was very different and very unexpected, particularly from me, because it took the kind of twinkly post-rock emo sound that was very atypical of the genre, even for the stuff that it predicted, just because a lot of that other stuff that you can compare it to is a little bit more roughshod in its production. This is about being polished. It's about glimmering, sparkling instrumentals. It's about atmosphere and combining it with some decent instrumentation. But this LP3 was kind of a moment where the band sought some kind of crossover appeal, but not like pop crossover appeal. It was really just more alternative music stuff. Like we had Haley Williams featuring on that album on the song Uncomfortably Numb, which is just one of the best American football songs, period. We also had guest vocalists like Elizabeth Powell and, of course, Slowdive's Rachel fucking Goswell herself. Praise be unto her on that record. And if I'm honest, and if I can speak for a couple of my cohorts, American Football LP3 is my favorite American football album. It's compact, it's tightly designed, the song structures are a little bit more reined in. It's just more my kind of album. And people responded well to it, but not like with adulation or anything. So the future of American football has just kind of not even really been a thing. It's just like, are they going to be one of the bands that eventually comes back, or are they just going to coast off of the success of albums past? Because at this point, they can do whatever they want. So now we have LP4. And interestingly enough, it kind of feels like all of the sequels to the original American football self-titled have kind of been merged together. We kind of see the most disparate aspects of this band's sound colliding together to meet a middle ground. Because when this album is plaintive and pretty and just kind of lets you revel in that atmosphere that this band is good at, it is the most atmospheric. It is the most billowing. It is the most long. And when it wants to go for something that's a little bit more muscular, it's at the most muscular this band have ever been. And to me, it yields results that I like, but I am also decidedly a little bit mixed on for a couple of reasons. So, Jen, I'm gonna go ahead and guess. You weren't familiar with American football until now, were you?
No.
Figured as much. That's why your perspective is valuable because you do not have the baggage that some of us do.
So let me talk to you about my experience with this album this week. I even went back and listened to the original American Football LP1, and I'm a big fan of like I guess what you would call second wave Midwest emo, as dumb of a title as I think Midwest emo is. Like I'm a big fan of modern baseball, mom jeans,
Fuck
front
yeah, modern
bottoms.
baseball.
Yeah, front bottoms, stuff like that. And so this is my first time really going back to the progenitor that is American football. And man, that album sounds like it came out yesterday. I
Right?
was so surprised by how well that album is aged. It probably helped that I listened to the not too long ago 25th anniversary remaster of the record,
Mm-hmm.
but it
Choice.
sounds crisp and
Mm-hmm.
lovely. And I really liked the band's approaches to melodies and lyricism. So color me shocked when I press play on this and it feels like a complete sonic departure in comparison. This is leaning way more on the post rock,
Mm-hmm.
especially on the heavier tracks like Man Overboard, which is a big leap forward in the mixing and the instrumentation. I love the vocal layering on this track. I love this slow crescendo, these humming guitars that build all the way through the verse up until this big chorus. And the vocals all across this album sound really great, but I especially love the vocal harmonies on this and on the second verse. And it just has this great guitar melody that cues in at the very end that brings some of that Midwest emo styling back into the mix. But by leaning more into the post-rock stylings, this had me thinking about the Twilight Sad record as well that we talked
Interesting.
about not too long ago. And I think especially the inclusion of guest vocalist Brendan Yates of Turnstile
Yeah.
got me thinking about how this band might want to incorporate more synths and more dream pop influences into their sound. One that,
Yes.
if these guys have been listening to a lot of Turnstile, which it sounds like they have,
Mm-hmm.
makes sense to be something that they would start to kind of chase.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved the melancholy hums and the shrill guitars all around no feeling. It's a very melancholic album, which made it very difficult
Oh
to
yes.
sit with at times. But I was getting really into the production of it. I love a
Mm.
lot of the guitar tones. I love a lot of the drum textures that are all
Oh
across this
God,
album.
yes.
The drums on Bad Moons feels very like lo-fi, but
Mm.
it fits a song that's so deeply enmeshed in this theme of arrested development and solitude.
Arrested Development. That was exactly what I was gonna say.
The idea that you can barely hear the instruments on some parts of that song, Bad Moons, but then it leads to this great cacophonous long outro that reminded me of the really long one on LP1 that I can't remember the name of right now,
Yes.
that everybody likes and
Yes.
is
The
apparently
the song
everybody's,
on that
yeah,
album.
everybody's favorite American football song that I can't remember the name of. I'm embarrassing. It's okay. But the malaise and
Hmm.
the grudges that come through in this
Yeah,
lyricism can make this album straight up ugly to sit with. This is your
I
favorite
agree.
divorce album's favorite divorce album.
God, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I thought about that especially on Patron Saint of Pale, and I've been using the word malaise a lot, but I think the line that stuck with me the most on this entire record is I can't bathe in your malaise anymore. I'd rather be profane than chaste and bored. Man, and all these discordant key hits at the last movement of this song, and the way that the last leg of this album moves more toward a potential reconciliation before ultimately admitting defeat and kind of succumbing to the want to seethe in the failure.
Yeah.
Like on the song Desdemona, which,
Yep.
wow, that name is a choice.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
There's a lot of potential Shakespeare ladies that you could bring up and make it fit into the themes of this album. But Desdemona is especially poignant, and it's an especially vulgar choice for the emotional space that this album is in. And then, do we think this is going to be the last American football album?
Gosh, I have
Because No Soul to
no.
Save sounds like the walk-off.
I mean, honestly, yeah, like there is a sting of finality that this has. The only reason I would push against that is that it just, these last two American football albums, if you take away the fact that they were released 7 years apart from each other, it feels like the band is taking a concerted effort to kind of redefine what an American football album is, like getting these weird kind of left field and debatably sort of more mainstream collaborators and making their sound a little bit more pillowy, I guess you could put it. It feels like they might be gearing themselves up to just sort of maybe they'll release another album down the line and it'll be kind of like this just because the framework's loose enough, but I don't know. If they stopped after this, I really wouldn't be shocked.
I guess the thing that I most want to get across when talking about this record is that it's very emotionally intense,
Hmm.
even in its most aloof moments, which I think are its worst. The 2 minute interludes on this,
Yeah,
just cut,
whatever.
whatever. But even in its more loose moments, there's an emotional heaviness to the lyricism and to the production of this that's really different than anything on LP1 and really different than any of their Midwest emo contemporaries and offspring. Again, by leaning more into the dream pop, by leaning into a little bit mathy approaches to
Yeah.
song construction on this, it escalates into a kind of maturity in its musicianship that I think is interesting to think about because so much of Midwest emo I appreciate or I associate, excuse me, with this feeling of young naivete,
Oh
with
yeah.
this dialectic of really sharp emotional intelligence that a lot of my favorite Midwest emo writers are able to bring forward. But this album feels resigned
Hmm.
to the state that it's in a way where it's not as eager to pick apart its own inclinations. And so
No.
it can lead to the record feeling a lot more solemn and a lot more bitter than your average Midwest emo project might, with its, ironies and hard on sleeve moments of sincerity. There's not much of that to be found here. And
No.
so my difficulty and my appreciation with American Football LP4 is in its willingness to be so sullen,
Yeah.
but your mileage may vary because of that.
I think that I definitely pick up on a lot of what you're saying because I feel like this particular overlapping of subgenres is like it's very atypical of my preferences because normally I like a pretty even mixture of atmosphere and muscularity. I like the two subgenres being blended in more or less equal fashion, or I tend to prefer them leaning into the atmospheric side. However, this particular kind of music, I actually end up finding myself way more gravitating towards the more muscular bands, which I think is why my appreciation for American football over the years has been at a bit of a distance, at least comparatively speaking. But like, I found this to be incredibly thoughtful in basically all the ways that every American football album is thoughtful. But I think that the writing, I did encounter a challenge in that the way that this discusses how the main character is in that kind of state of arrested development, there is a kind of wonder and naivete of looking back on the past and kind of immortalizing and even putting it on a pedestal. And on occasion, it feels like it leans so hard into this that the starry-eyed naivete just it doesn't really work with the cynicism and the just overall resignation of the rest of the album. I know it's meant to contrast, but it ends up just feeling very out of place on the album for me. It's discussing a lot of juvenile emotions and a lot of, more contemporary, like adult emotions. And I'm not saying that you have to focus on just one of them or that you can't do a little bit of both. But in the way that this does it, by kind of plateauing of like the first song on this album, which is my favorite coincidentally, and a fantastic song, Man Overboard. The textured drums on here, oh man, I was on that shit like crack in the 80s, dude. Like I was immediately leaping onto that and I was like, oh yeah, I love this. It's got this mathy groove to it. And the overall kind of ship metaphor of the song really works. It actually made me think of the songwriting of the Quadeca album from last year a lot. And I was like,
Which
okay, this
also
is
intelligently, if you want to take it in that direction, ties into the Othello reference. Othello starts with him coming back from sea.
it does actually. So okay, there's a bit of a Shakespeare undercurrent going on here that I feel like we could maybe take apart a little bit. And you know what? I like when this band kind of reaches for imagery that's often like that, and then it kind of reins itself back in. That's kind of what I think the opening 1-2 punch is designed for, of Man Overboard and No Feeling, because Man Overboard is about it's kind of setting up the emotional plateau of the record. It is just like you are in a state of suspended emotional animation. It's like you're cutting your anchor. You are free. You are untethered. And with that freedom comes both strength and isolation, but mostly isolation. And I just find that whenever this album tries to be a little bit more holistic, it kind of ends up diluting itself a little bit because American football sound is so focused on being this very overwhelming. Like, I think the choice of collaborator in the form of Wisp is a really telling kind of inclusion here because Wisp is kind of a lesser known sort of dream pop metal shoegaze band that I actually really love. Did not expect them to show up on a band like American Football's album, but I will take that win where I can get it. But it's very telling to me that that was where they went, just because the producer of this is also somebody who deals in a lot of very heavy music and a lot of even post-punk. Like they've produced a couple of Proto Martyr albums. And I feel like that heaviness is just being applied to very gentle music. The music itself is deeply nuanced. The emotions, on the other hand, are less so intentionally, and that kind of works, but I wanted this to kind of hone in on the sort of post-divorce angle a little bit stronger. This feels like it's maybe trying to cover one too many bases in terms of what its thematic core even is. Because I can tell you a lot of things that this album kind of wades in the waters of, but thematically, it's a little bit more difficult. I have to be pretty vague when describing what the totality of this amounts to. And it ends up making me feel just a little bit lost in a sound that's a bit less definitive. Like again, I prefer the direction of a band like The World is a Beautiful Place, pursuing like a post-hardcore alt metal sound and prog metal sound because it kind of made them shed unnecessary parts of their sound or just evolve into something else. And it feels like American football is evolving their instrumentation, but less so their writing. It feels like that's maybe trying to play catch up a little bit. And it's good, it's functional. I like it. It's a very pretty album, but it doesn't really last with me in the same way that LP3 did, for instance. I think this is absolutely worth checking out for the record, but it didn't really completely land with me. I can only just call it good, pleasant, a nice time, a thoughtful album, a very good experience. But
I don't even
I,
know if I would call it pleasant. Let's
well, instrumentally, it's very pleasant. Emotionally, it's very thorny and wiry, and you have to be into that contrast to get on board with this album. So keep that in mind when going into it. And like this clearly isn't the same American football from 1999, and you can kind of tell that discussion around the band online has devolved into, oh, the band isn't exactly the same as they used to be 26 years ago, so now I don't know if I like them no more. And it's like, just let them evolve a little bit. But at the same time, I can still understand having your gripes with it. But, you know, I'm still confident that American football could have another great album in them. This not quite there, but I can see how it could pave the road for one, you know?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of promise on this, and there's a lot of standout moments and highlights to be sure.
Yes.
But I just wish the writing, I wish that the lyricism could pick a lane between impulsive and wandering and precise and self-critical. And it can never really
Yeah.
quite pick one or the other. And I get that there can be an intentional contrast there, but
Yes.
it's not situated as with as much pronunciation as it could be to make that more interesting, I guess I should say.
I completely agree. This is a thumbs up. It's
Yes.
definitely a good record that you should try if you're into this kind of stuff. But, if you're going in expecting that LP1 magic again, temper your expectations a little bit. Or if you really liked LP3, you get a little bit more of that. So there you have it. So now let's move on to It's Been Awful by Isaiah Rashad. And Isaiah Rashad has kind of been in that terminally B tier group of really excellent top dog signees that just have not really received the same level of mainstream push as the label's sort of top members. Like Isaiah Rashad isn't exactly a Kendrick or a SZA, for instance, or even a Doichi, really, but he's way more in the lane of like Absol, for instance, or even oh hell, Blue Lips, help me out.
Oh, Schoolboy Q.
Schoolboy Q, thank you. Or Schoolboy Q, for instance. It's a little bit more in that lane, but I think a lot of people who will tell you who like really love Isaiah Rashad's music will tell you that like, he's always deserved to be in that upper echelon. And you know what? I more or less agree. I think that top dogs kind of B players have been sort of unfairly considered in a different tier just because they don't have that insane commercial movement. Even though Schoolboy Q he's on his way. He's getting there. Blue Lips was a big album. But still, I've been waiting for a new Isaiah Rashad project to drop for a while now because The House is Burning in 2021 I thought was an interesting insight into this dude as an artist, a very difficult, thorny, and personal record that I didn't love, but I saw a lot of potential. And I was like, this guy is able to blend a kind of low key Southern and West Coast hip hop, but it's like really scaled back. It's really kind of it's a lot more sedate, but I mean that in the best possible of ways. In that Isaiah Rashad combines the precision of the flows of Kendrick Lamar, but with the atmosphere, mood, and tone of like Joji. It's a very strange and very unique combo that I really love, where it's very nocturnal, but it doesn't necessarily sound like the energy isn't there. Isaiah is amazing at being able to set the tone. And honestly, on this album, It's Been Awful, I think that he more or less accomplishes the goal of making a front to back great album because this doesn't really ever majorly drop the ball for me. We get a lot of incisive moments, a lot of moments of great technical, precise rapping that is also never showy. Isaiah fits into the fabric of these songs extraordinarily well. And Isaiah's kind of unique place of recovering from addiction and alcohol abuse that he's been struggling with for the past couple of years. It's why there's been 5 years in between this album and that one. And not really knowing how to bounce back from it properly and just trying to find his way of doing it. And he's not fully there yet. And this is kind of a progress report of a guy who's trying to get better. It is, in many respects, kind of a crash out album. But at the same time, you never really feel like any of this gets away from him. His identity as both a recovering addict and notably a bisexual man in an industry that is not really full of accepting people's identities in that particular way makes his perspective on this album really fascinating. And honestly, I found so much of the writing on this album to just be so delightfully refreshing and nuanced in ways that I really feel like has been missing from hip hop for a while now. I kind of resent the fact that we live in the timeline where Isaiah Rashad isn't bigger than he is because, yeah, I have to find myself agreeing with some of his fans. I do think he is kind of terminally underrated now.
So what you're getting on It's Been Awful is absolute 100% classic jazz rap.
Hmm.
And that's my bread and butter. Like I loved the Mobb Deep album, and this
Yep.
reminded me a lot of the last Mobb Deep record. I've been listening to the De La Soul record like once a week since we reviewed it,
Still so
and
good, man.
and this is giving me those same kinds of notes as well. But the first track, the New Sublime, really sets us up
Ah,
perfectly with the drums and these ethereal backing vocals and these long, really articulate verses from Isaiah.
yes,
These songs have big, distinct movements about them
they do.
that means that even when these beats can be a little bit samey, you're going to get something structurally kinetic that continues moving forward and continues going in new directions. And similar to the Jill Scott, Isaiah's, promising to make something meaningful this time, promising to bring us the truest art, the new sublime, if you will. But then what I loved about this record is that I found how easily it's able to kind of cut loose and have fun to be so refreshing for a record like this. Because
Hmm.
then you got stuff like Man on a Mission or Same Shit and Same Shit especially leans more into a trap direction
Yeah.
while he's still able to have this really aspirational tone about wanting to emulate all these people that he admires to, again, make something meaningful, make something that can move something or somebody. And then you have, I realized that I loved this album once Boy in Red came.
There is no reason why this is not a hit. Like I heard the SZA hook on this song, and I was like, this should play on the radio. Why isn't it? What's going on here, guys?
It needs a sample that obvious and prominent to make it as big as Luther,
Yeah.
but it should be.
Amen.
It's a
Absolutely. I
it's
was
a
shocked that
great
he was
song.
capable of making something like this, considering what came before it.
Yes, and I loved because I also was not hugely a fan of the last record, The House is Burning. I thought I had a lot of admirable qualities,
Hmm.
but this brings forward all the stuff that I wanted out of The House is Burning. Sharp contrast in the tones with consistent movements in between, more melodic stuff with a lot more singing. And Isaiah's got a great singing voice
Oh yeah.
to trap stuff to the more, what's the word I'm looking for? To more stoner rap in
Hmm.
some of the second half of this record, but like Superficial leans way into the
Yeah.
melodic elements and has one of my favorite bars on this, which is I'm worth more than the rap shit, worth more than the rap sheet. Ooh.
Good flip there. Great flip. That's my second favorite song on here. Terrific stuff.
And all of this is coming from Isaiah trying to grapple with his struggles with addiction, his struggles with his burgeoning sexuality, because I mean, it's unclear to me whether or not Isaiah even, or how long even he's been out as a queer person
Hmm.
before the sex tape leak
Hmm.
after the house is burning that became such an industry headline for a little bit. And so it's really, and I mean this is one of the most unique hip hop records of the year in this regard. You're genuinely getting to see an exploration of bisexuality in several moments of the lyricism here, and
Yes.
that makes this a unique contribution to the genre alone. Much less that it's done with such care and
Yeah.
such wanderlust
Hmm.
for the idea of recovery and the idea of what attempting to discover more about your sexuality could do to right your discontents, to right your unease, right? What does learning more about myself do to help me solve my problems? And Scared to Look Down is where he's exploring that a lot. He's talking about his addictive cycles, but he's also talking about, having meetings in the kitchen about some chicken and some gravy, which
Mhm.
is just, that's so funny.
This is still a very witty, very clever, and often very funny album. I would say that like the writing on here hits about every note you would want a just general hip hop release released in 2026 to hit. Like there's topical stuff, personal stuff, systemic stuff. Like there's just it's a great sort of guy at the top looking down record. He's got the adequate amount of perspective and the eye to be able to translate that perspective into words effectively. In fact, I would say that that manifests in at the album's best moment to me, which is like a song that I'm still kind of processing actually exists because of its unique subject material, the way it tackles it, and the just general incisiveness of it. And that's the song Act Normal, which is a
Oh
song
man.
about porn addiction, but it's so much bigger than that. Isaiah is able to take that and essentially connect it into the web of the greater misogynistic industrial complex that capitalism has wrought in combination with the internet. And Isaiah ponders basically the lingering effects of what being raised in this culture and in this time is going to do to so many people and what it's already done to so many people. In fact, I would be willing to say that, like, when it comes to talking about this stuff, I haven't felt an issue like this spoken on this poignantly and this just well since Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, and we get the second half of that album in which there are many moments that are a whole lot like this. But it comes across as both a necessary and sobering perspective and just a fascinating journey to be taken on. Like I was reminded of like Most Def on this song. It was like a storytelling song like New World Water or Mathematics or something, where it really felt like somebody just laying out a topic, but he's at the center of it. And he's talking about how it's affected his ability to sort of parse through relationships with both men and women in his life, about how it makes him inherently distrustful of them, and how it's not their fault. It's his fault, but that still doesn't get rid of those inclinations inside you. Just because you're able to realize and take a step outside yourself that you are the one being unreasonable, it doesn't remove the emotions that create that friction in the first place. And I love that. It's such a fascinating, intelligent song. And it's like, this is the kind of shit I want to hear more of because, like, again, bisexuality in general, not a commonly represented thing as of late. And also, when it is represented, it's very general. It's very much just like, oh, yeah, you got the bi dude. It's like, there's never anything about, like, what is unique about this life experience? What does it say about you, and what can you say about it? And now that we're at the point where we have people in the industry like Frank Ocean, Tyler the Creator, Isaiah Rashad, it's like, these guys have the opportunity and the platform to speak on this issue, and they are guys that it's like they all belong to communities, communities that are men that do not typically welcome and receive these ideas very generally. So putting them out into the ether is good, and putting them out into the ether with intelligence and with nuance, I very much appreciated it.
Act Normal is one of my favorite songs of the year because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it starts with this
Absolutely.
very specific idea of like changes in access to pornography have caused changing trends in sexual development
Yep.
in the youngins of the internet generation. And we know this. We know
Uh-huh.
this. But Isaiah Rashad uses that as a frame to talk about the other systems that push people into the closet, that push
Yep.
people into misogyny, that push people into wanting to embody the most well respected performances of masculinity,
Mm-hmm.
even when those respected performances are not entirely respectful to the other people around you. It's seeing people take pride in being selfish and in being lascivious and in being lustful in ways that hurt other people,
Hmm.
and realizing that all these systems groom, and I'm using that word very purposefully,
Oh yeah.
groom us to want to be a certain kind of person, act normal, be closeted, be the guy. The rapper is a porn star.
Yeah. The act in Act Normal is the key part of the song, and it implicitly states it is a performance. That's what the song is. It is Isaiah Rashad realizing that everything actually no, that's just this album. It's Isaiah Rashad realizing that everything is a performance, and it's him stepping away from the stage and trying to take notes because he doesn't know how to do it. And frankly, I mean, same, bro. Like shit. I found this album deeply relatable at several points where I was just like, damn, I never really heard anybody put something quite like that, and I kind of feel a lot better now that I have.
Shout out to Dominic Fike, whose inclusion on
Mm,
this album was a very pleasant surprise.
that
I
song is
listened.
so good. Those fucking rate your music nerds who are just like, oh, this is too poppy for my taste. Oh, fucking shut up. This song is a banger. This is a banger.
It's really good. And I'll admit, I was skeptical when I
Oh,
saw
for
his name
sure.
in the credits of the album. I was like, he's got a couple songs I like, but I listened to that album, I didn't really enjoy it. Da, 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 da. But no, he sounds incredible on this. They have great vocal chemistry that made me
Yeah, they
wonder where
do.
the song was going to go at certain points.
I
I didn't
mean,
know if it
I
was
kind
going
of
to go
like,
in a directly romantic place between the two vocalists, and it doesn't completely get there.
but
And I
it
kind of wish
flirts with
it
it. It
it
flirts with
flirts with it. Definitely. And I love how Isaiah is able to use Fike as a kind of lean to be able to move quickly from rapping to singing to letting
it.
Fike come in and then do a completely different kind of singing on the second verse of this, which I think is really great. And again, Isaiah's singing voice on this is incredible. I
He could
love the
pull
sound of
a
his voice.
full-blown neo soul turn. Like he really could. If his next album is him doing like a D'Angelo thing or him doing a Frank Oceany thing, like he could knock it out of the park. He really could. Like again, him and Jid, y'all can keep going. You can keep doing this, and I will be here. I will be buying the album. I day one, please.
Yeah, the melodic stuff is my favorite parts of this, but
Hmm.
that's not to take anything away from the straight up bangers on this, like MOM, like
Ah,
Same Shit, like the 719 freestyle, which again, whenever I see it's a red flag whenever I see freestyle as the last song on the album, but
yeah,
it's pretty good and it does a really good job of like thematically tying everything together, ironically, in its monotonous of just constantly being like keep running it, keep running it, keep running it. It
a little
feels
bit.
like a moment, but it feels like a moment where Isaiah is able to kind of look inside of himself and being like, okay, I gotta keep motion happening here in order to chase the goal. And so it makes sense that this album ends on an increasing intensity from Nothing to Hide to Superpowers to the 719 freestyle. And I'm really into this. I really, really like this album. I was floored by its transparency, by its willingness to have Isaiah kind of playing a guy who's making an ass of himself on songs like Happy Hour and songs like Do I Look High. Just this
Hmm.
perfect one-two punch of the like slump of hedonism that happens in
Happy Hour
recovery.
is such a fantastic song at embodying what it's about sonically really, really smartly. Like just the delivery of everything. It's like, this is a song that sounds like somebody got a little bit too drunk and then started yelling in the studio a little bit. And it's like that energy feels really palpable. And you're like, yeah, it's like every song on this album feels like it has a real rooted moment. It has a time, it has a place. It calls to mind a setting. Like Isaiah Rashad, he's a guy who knows how to paint a picture with his music, and that's not something that everybody has. And like I'm just glad that I'm now on this train because I want to see where it goes because I hope that maybe because he's at least seems to be on the upswing when it comes to addiction, he's at least like taken inventory and knows what he needs to do based on this album, but maybe he can sort of get into a more regular release schedule and sort of make music in a more fulfilling and creative and timely fashion because like I really think he could cement himself as one of the voices in hip hop. It's just that he's got to capitalize on some kind of momentum. And Top Dog, fucking like you really got to start pushing these guys. Like, come on, you need Ed to give everybody the Schoolboy Q push. We need to see that.
I want this album to have the same kind of momentum as like I think this is very comparable to Mr. Morale,
I
honestly,
do. I
in terms
absolutely
of
do.
its thematic approaches and in terms of its even its, it's leaning way more on the neo soul and less on the trap influences, and
Yeah.
even its trap influences feel more, it's weird to call trap rootsy ever, but Mr. Morale is not exactly rootsy trap music,
No.
whereas this is. This is very like
Yes.
OG sampled hi-hats type stuff when it leans more into that. And I
Hmm.
appreciated that it only kind of flirts with it at very specific points, but it's way more in the direction of the neo soul and the jazz rap and the conscious hip hop side
Yeah.
of what Isaiah's been able to bring to the table. I think that's where he's strongest. And I think that's
Hmm.
where if he's gonna do another album like this, I want him to lean even more into the psychedelic stuff because oh man,
Yes.
the cloudiness of the beat on Nothing to Hide and just how good he is at mixing vocals
The
and mastering
layering,
vocals
so good.
makes me want to see him go way deeper into the psychedelia influences.
He needs, like, I think that Isaiah Rashad plus a producer who can capitalize on exactly what you just said, that's a recipe for an instant classic, if you ask me. Get somebody
And
like, you know what?
you know who
Actually,
I
I
think
think,
could do it? I think
what?
070 Shake can make a really good Isaiah Rashad album.
Okay, now we're cooking. Now
I
we're
was listening to
cooking.
the Little Sims EP that just dropped, and
Yeah,
070 Shake has a production credit on one of those songs. And I was listening to this right after that, and I was thinking, no, get this guy on Isaiah's next project, and that's gonna be magic.
I absolutely agree. I think that collision could yield something that would just be undeniable, just totally unforgettable. I want him to work with the same sound palette that like Kid Cudi works with, because that just to me, I feel like that would be fireworks, and also it would be nice to enjoy the production of Kid Cudi's music without having to enjoy Kid Cudi. You seem like a nice dude. I just don't really like your music very much. But, I respect the spirit. I get it. I see the vision. It's just not a vision that works for me. Isaiah Rashad, on the other hand, that's a vision that works for me. I would say that like this is probably just gonna be shy of my favorite albums of the year, but I'm not denying that it probably could grow on me too because it's got several Song of the
It's
Year
growing on me
candidates.
just from talking about it with you. Like I just want to go listen to it again right now.
I'm having a bit of a flashback to albums like Sudan Archives, where the more I talk about it with you, the more I'm like, oh, I just want to fucking turn it on in the car again. I just want to go back one more time. Give me another hit. Give me another hit. I need it. I need that sweet juice, baby. But yeah, it's this is a must listen if you're a hip hop fan. I really do think so. Even if you didn't like the previous two records, this is clearly an artist coming into their own. It's just the unfortunate point at which like, he's coming into his own at a real dark night of the soul. But that being said, it's not an album that's going to mire you in that. Like you get enough self-reflection to leave satisfied if that's what you want. But if you don't want to be like, oh, I can't handle like the gravity of a Mr. Morale, it doesn't quite get there. Like, I like Father Time, like I'll put that song on and I'll just be a fucking weeping mess by the end of it. This, on the other hand, I'll be like staring at a wall for a while, but I won't be looking for 6 feet of rope or anything. But
There's a lot of moments of really well earned and really well placed levity on this
mm,
record that honestly helps contribute to its themes because you're getting that kind of back and forth of like wanting to be better but then slipping. And that's where stuff like again Happy Hour comes in to really fulfill this album's purpose of being about not being there yet. I think the thing that I respect, but the thing that's occasionally frustrating about Mr. Morale is that Kendrick is able to keep the album's most thorny thematic content at arm's reach because of the way that he's situating himself in the narrative
yes, I
on
agree.
songs like Auntie Diaries and on songs like Mother I Sober. But this Isaiah is in it the whole way through,
Yes.
even when it's not directly in front of you that he's struggling and that this is a problem. It's always gonna end up being that way if you go a little bit further into the track list and really get the full picture of what he's trying to do. This is a very first person perspective conscious hip hop album. And that's something that's really hard to do. And Isaiah's done a
Mm.
really good job. And I really appreciate it a lot.
That's a fascinating way of putting that. I would describe Mr. Morale as an album of the third person, and I would describe this one as an album in the first person. Even though those songs do not specifically ascribe to that method of relaying their lyrics to you, it's just that spiritually, that's where I feel like the artists align with their own subject material. And that makes this, again, very valuable. I like me a good first person narrative. So this is an enthusiastic thumbs up for
Big
me, truly.
recommendation.
I
Please go
would
check this out.
do not let this get lost in the shuffle, nor should you get the new Kenny Mason album lost in the shuffle. I only bring that up because it's probably going to be impossible to cover and it's going to be good, so check that out too while you're there. Wink. So that is going to be it today for reviews. And as always, everybody, tell us what you're listening to, what you thought about the albums that we just talked about, and tell us about anything that you might want to see featured on the show in the future. And now, as always, folks, rock over London, rock on Chicago, Maxwell House. Good to the last drop.